Welcome back, everybody. Appreciate everybody who watched my last video on the front end swap on the 73 back there. I'm gonna do something a little bit different today, and that is go over the history of that car. Like I had briefly mentioned, a few of you may be interested in this story and learn a little bit about the background on that car and its significance to me. I have shared the story to a lot of people that I know, and for that I made a little joke about, you may be sick and tired of hearing about it because it is a pretty big focal point of my history as a person who's grown up with muscle cars and learning how to work on my own things, and to have a full circle moment with that car, which I'll get into here shortly, just kind of embodies a lot of my personality and obviously my hobbies and interests. I've seen a lot of these stories on the internet before where somebody sells a car and is lucky enough to find it decades later. Well, I'm glad to be able to share in that group of people and dive right in to explain my history with the car and, again, its significance to me. So we'll go ahead and get over to the car and take a look at it and dive right in on what all those pieces of history were like for me. So this is the 73. If you didn't watch the first video that I posted to my new channel that I started up this year, you really haven't missed much other than the fact that we did a 68 to 72 front end conversion on this car. I think it turned out great. It's not completely wrapped up yet. I still have to do the wiring on those parking lamps, but it's been really cold and it takes a while for that little 5,000 watt heater to heat up this garage, which is, I'm pretty sure, not insulated from the builder. So anyways, this is my 73 Nova Custom. I bought this car when I was, I believe, 15 years old. And I wasn't 14 at the time because I had a moped prior to this, but I was living in a small town, and I always grew up wanting a muscle car. My dad always had cool classic cars, and I don't know why, but I just always loved the look of this generation of Chevy Nova. And lucky enough, found one, I think maybe 5 to 7 miles away from the small town that I was living in at the time. And it looked exactly as you see it right now, paint wise, same color at least. But it did have 15-inch rallies on it. They might have been 14s, but I can't remember. These are now 17-inch rallies from Vision Wheel that I have put on the car, but it had 15-inch rallies. I didn't have a license yet, so the only way I could drive it was to school and back, or if my parents were with me, of course. And it had a 350 with a 350 turbo transmission, and I will plug in some photos of what this car used to look like right here for you to take a look at and just compare what it looks like now to what it looked like then. Just some proof for you that the color and everything is exactly the same. Now, what actually happened with this car was I moved to the larger suburbs of Des Moines. And so I was living in a small town, like I mentioned, when I originally purchased the car. And against my better judgment, sold the car to buy something a little bit safer for a new driver, with power brakes and things like that. It did have manual 4-disc drum brakes on it, and being able to, stop at 16 years old is pretty important. And not to say it had a lot of power back then, but for a 16-year-old driver, you can get into some trouble pretty easily, I feel like. So against my better judgment, I sold it around the time that I turned 16. So I never truly got to enjoy being 16 and driving this car on a regular occasion outside of, like I said, mentioning getting to drive it to school and with my parents on occasion as well. So, like I said, exterior wise is exactly the same. And the interior So same door panels, same painted dash, actually the same carpet. My dad and I put this carpet in this car when I had originally bought it. And the front seats have been, the front seat has been taken out, but it does have the same, like, oh God, I don't know what you want to call this material. But it has the same original bench seat that was in the car. The color is this dark green, and it's got this like, I don't know what you want to call this material. I can't think of what this is called off the top of my head, but it's like a plush. You know, it's soft, and it definitely goes with like a 90s era build. Don't have the headliner anymore. So when I got a little bit older, and I've always regretted selling this car. Always regretted it. But I just never gave up hope that maybe someday I would be able to find it again and buy it back. And that's where the story starts to get much more interesting. So let's fast forward a few years. And by a few years, I mean 14 years approximately, from the time that I originally sold the car to the time that I found the car again. I finally was graduated from college, had a good job, had some extra money in the bank, and started looking again for a Nova. Not specifically this one. Now, it's always been on the back of my mind that I'd love to find it, but you know, those hopes kind of fade quickly. It's just not very common for that to happen, I feel like. And so I went and looked at a 74 Nova actually that I found on Marketplace, and it was just, I mean, it was completely rotten. All of the rear frame, rails, you name it. It was torched. It had been primered all black though, which meant, you know, on pictures online, it looked pretty good. So it ended up being a blessing in disguise, but a waste of, you know, 4 hours of driving there and back. So the next day, I was just kind of PO'd about my waste of time driving, and I was just like, I wonder if there's any potential for me to find this car. If there's a chance at all, I'm gonna go onto Facebook, and since I live in the state of Iowa, there's this huge Facebook page, I think it's called like Iowa Car Classifieds or something like that. It has like 100,000 members. So I just took a picture of the car, and it's like you see, it's a pretty unique green color. I took a picture of the car that I had on my Facebook from years back, plugged it on there, and I said, I owned this car from like 2006 to 2007. I would really love to be able to find this car again if somebody knows where it's at. And the second comment under my post, probably 30 minutes later, was just the tag of somebody's name. And I won't give away the name or anything like that for, you know, just confidentiality. I wouldn't want somebody sharing my information on the internet if they didn't want it to be out there. So I clicked on the person's profile, and the first picture I see is this car. And I'm pretty sure it was doing a burnout. And I immediately was just like overrun with all the emotions, right? Happiness, sadness, but I would say mostly happiness, and just eager to reach out. So that's what I did. I reached out to him, said, hey, explained everything like I just did. I would love the opportunity to be able to buy this car again someday. If you ever have any interest in selling it, please let me know. So as luck would have it, we talked for a few days. That talk turned into maybe a week or so, and ultimately I was able to make a agreement to purchase the car. He was willing to sell it and move on to some other projects. And if it hadn't been me, probably wasn't looking to sell the car, but I'm extremely thankful that I was able to purchase it and be reunited with what was my first car. My first car that was a Chevy Nova. How many people can say that, right? Very few. So I'm obviously extremely blessed as a person when I was 15 years old, and I'm still being blessed at the time, which was December of 2021, to have the opportunity and the means to be able to purchase the car a second time. Now, that's not to say that it was as cheap as the first time I bought the car. Obviously, the price of muscle cars has gone up, but the car also had some pretty hefty upgrades to it, all tasteful. So things that kept me very interested in the car, nothing that I wasn't interested in or unable to change if I wanted to or whatever. And that is probably the coolest part about the car. So let's dive into that. That's right. She's been swapped. There is no 350 to be found anymore. So, it did not look like this when I bought it the second time. I will plug in another photo of that to show you what it looked like and go over what I've changed since that time here next. So, as you can see, the 6 liter, which is what this is a little bit different looking. Internals, it's exactly the same. However, I wanted to go with a specific look and change a few things up in here. And so I put an LS6 intake on it. This is actually an LS7 style mass airflow where it's in the tube. So I don't have to have those couplers with the multiple rings on the other styles that are out there. And I really went with the green theme. I just hadn't seen it done before. Obviously it doesn't match the paint, but I just thought it was kind of cool to have some green accents in here. I did a few other things to this area. I put on the Detroit Speed firewall delete plate. It looks all right. You know, someday I'd like to do it right and actually have it blended into the firewall itself, but there was just a piece of sheet metal self-tapped on there, I believe, and I just wanted it to be a little bit cleaner. So I did that, changed a few other things up like valve covers and coil packs. Put the, I don't know if it's Speed Engineering, I think is the name of the brand. The headers, they don't fit worth a hell. I had to just completely dimple them on both sides to fit around the control arms. And I did have to put a different oil pan on it. It was actually sitting on the cross member, so the car was vibrating pretty bad. I probably could have put some spacers in there, but it wasn't like the Holley style pan, which is what typically is recommended. So I ended up putting one of those on once I pulled the motor. Aluminum radiator, electric spall fan, 16-inch spall fan, and most recent project that I did was the Willwood manual brake.
Daddy, I want to turn on the green.
Okay, just a second, all right? Joy of toddlers. I did the Willwood conversion this last winter, and what I did for that was I actually, you can't really see them that well in here, but I ran the C6 Core 3 bracket kit with the calipers and rotors, and maybe I'll make a separate video on how to do that actually, because I haven't been able to see much out there in terms of useful information. All right, we got the Grinch on for the toddler, so we're back at it. I converted everything to AN hoses, so fuel lines are all AN. With the LS6 intake, there's no return line, so that made things a little bit easier. It did have like an LS1 style all steel intake on it, and so was able to reduce it down to one line back to the tank. And I also did the power steering lines in this. I actually just used all high pressure line for the return and for the feed, just because I wanted them to match, and it looks better that way. So I built these myself, built the AN lines to the fuel back, and then one of the nicest things that I did was actually, and I would absolutely recommend this company, LSX Specialties, built my harness for me. So I went back to a stock style ECU. I really wanted to have like the OBD2 plug to be able to plug in. It had a Holley Dominator on it, which would be great if you were, wanting to take this thing down the track and yada, yada, yada. But I really wanted to just go back to the stock style PCM setup. So I did that. I reached out to Andy at LSX Specialties, and I'll link him here because he's a great guy and his company is unmatched as far as quality and customer service goes. He built this harness for me, and I mean, you can tell the quality of this harness is very, very good. It's not like the cheap eBay harnesses you get. He builds everything specifically to your needs and where things are located. So I gave him the exact coil packs I'm running, the what mass airflow sensor I'm running, where are the various water pump sensors and oil pressure sensor, etc. And he builds everything to exactly what you need along with the PCM, and it comes in that nice braided material. On top of that, I actually rewired this car top to bottom. I pulled every single strand of wire that was in this car out, and I think 2 winters ago, so not this winter of 24, but the winter prior, I rewired the whole car front to back. And I used the Painless 23 Circuit Pro Series for that, with the bulkhead connector, as you can see. So it fits in the factory spot, comes with all the instructions that you need to be able to rewire a car yourself. Totally doable for, I would say, most people who are mechanically inclined, and I really recommend doing that, especially if you have an original harness that's been hacked into in a bunch of different spots. I had a parasitic drain that I just could not figure out, and I had all the old glass fuses that would just pop, and it just was time. So that was one of the best things I've done to the car, on top of the brakes, of course, which I failed to mention. This setup with factory rear drums and that Wilwood master cylinder and C6 front disc brakes stops incredible without the power assist. I thought about doing Hydro Boost, but I just thought cleanliness wise and having a much smaller footprint, and cost of course comes into play, that was a really good option. I talked back and forth with multiple people online about what they'd used. Can't recommend that setup enough. It's been great. I drive this car all summer long in the city and have absolutely no problems stopping it. Whenever I've had to, it has yet to have an issue, and I've been running this pretty hard around town since I did that. All right, so coming back to the interior, like I mentioned, the original bench seat is gone, unfortunately, and I would love to have had that seat in here, but as you can see, it would not have fit with the shifter setup I've got. So this is the B&M Quick Silver slap shifter. It's great. It shifts super it's instant. It's just a really nice piece. It's expensive, but it seems to have been worth the money. Haven't had a single issue with the shifter cable as well, which was a little difficult to install. But I ended up going with the Dakota Digital dash or cluster, I should say. The original cluster is still in here, obviously not operational with the LS hooked up. None of those factory components work anymore. It is a factory AC car, as you can see. And one of the next projects I want to do to this is actually do some sort of vintage air system. I'm undecided on which one at this point in time, but the other thing I did is I put the radio delete plate on here, and I relocated the stereo to the glove box. And this has actually not been too bad because I have Bluetooth everything. Volume wise, I usually just keep it all the way up and then just adjust it from my phone, so I don't have to actually mess with anything. And at some point, I might build a console here and do like a double DIN screen with the backup camera and all that, but one piece of the pie at a time. And spending money, it's easy to spend a lot of money very quickly these days on parts for these cars and figure out where my priorities lie. So right now, this is what we've got, and I think it's going to stay this way for the time being. Now, what's kind of cool about this car, and another reason that I knew it was mine, obviously I knew from the exterior, but you always have that shadow of a doubt, like, okay, is it really the same car? Well, this is a dead giveaway. You can still see the original green kick panels, and there's other spots where it's been worn off as well. But this had all green interior in it when I owned it back in high school. And my dad and I pulled out all of the plastic panels and we painted all of them black, and including the door panels. So like I said, there's a lot of different spots where the paint's chipped off over the last how many years. And the other thing being the carpet. We put this carpet in ourselves. It doesn't really fit the greatest, and I've taken it out since then to put deadener on the floor. So I'm kind of contemplating about changing the color of the carpet, maybe back to a green. I don't remember if it was green or black the first time, but it just needed to be replaced because it was destroyed. So The other last thing I did was this Forever Sharp steering wheel. It's a great wheel. I put a different column in it because it had a column shift in it before, and with the floor shift column, I was having issues where this second piece back here would spin, and I didn't want to have that incorrect column on the car anymore. I wish I had put a tilt, but you know, my size, it really doesn't impact me, and I fit fine. You know, it would be a little bit more sporty to have a tilt column, but they're so expensive. So I got this one rebuilt on eBay for a good chunk of money, and I know that the tilts were even more than that. Now you're not gonna be able to see it at all because I have this thing completely backed up to the wall here. If you go back and look at my previous video, you can see the back of the car has actually been converted to a 72 style bumper. So the bumper's swapped, the mounts are swapped, and the tail panel, like I said, you can't see it at all. So I'll just go ahead and save you the trouble and just plug in a better photo, or if, like I said, if you want to go back to the previous video, go ahead and do that and you can get a better look. But it's been swapped to that style so it hugs the car better. That rear bumper on these 73, 74s, if you don't love them, then you most likely hate them. And I was never a fan of that look. It just was so bulky. But this is the most recent, in the last 2 years, hiccup that happened with this car. I got rear-ended on the interstate. And so this quarter, which, you know, this is the better looking side of the car, is very, very wavy. And, you know, it's broken out where there's a mount inside here where this, there's some sort of bracketry through here, I believe. Maybe it's actually back here further. But regardless, this is all broken out now, spider webbing. You can see where they hit here. And they hit down low too, because I have replaced this bumper now. This is the second 72 bumper that's on this car. And I ended up sanding all of this down and shooting this tail panel black. Thankfully, this never got hit, but it was all lower, and then part of their bumper was up here higher too. Thankfully, I wasn't injured or anything like that. I had a pretty good amount of whiplash though, and the car is still drivable. You know, thankfully, I've got it back up and operational, at least at this point in time. It's never going to look as great as it did until the car is fully repainted, unfortunately. But it's got its bumps and bruises to go with it the way it sits today anyways, and it looked pretty much like this up until that accident, other than that big old eyesore back there. So that's pretty much the history of the car. And you know, what's next? I'm sure that's what some people are thinking. Like I said, we did that 68 to 72 swap on the front. I've got some pretty awesome things coming here on the interior front. Those front seats are out of like I think the guy I bought the car back from said they were out of like a G6 or something. But it's definitely time to upgrade those and the rear seat while we're at it. And then I've got a headliner coming, which is on back order and has been for some time. So those are the next pieces interior wise. And like I mentioned, at some point, I really want to get vintage air in this car. So if you've got a kit in a 68 to 74 with an LS, and you can recommend me which one and why, I would love to hear what you suggest. So thanks for coming to my TED Talk of sorts, and hearing the background on the car. I hope you guys find it interesting and inspiring. If you have a situation like this and you're wanting to find your old car back, don't give up hope. You never know. 14 years later, I found mine about 30 minutes from where I was living. And don't underestimate the power of the internet or Facebook. Get on those car groups in your area, post pictures of your car, see if people know where it's at these days, and maybe it's changed hands a few times. This was on probably the third or fourth owner since I had it during that 14-year run. I think he had it for quite a while though, so it shifted hands multiple times in a shorter time frame between me and him ultimately getting it. So like I said, I wish you the best of luck if you're in a similar situation that I was in. And if you ultimately can't find your original car or your high school car or whatever the car meant to you and whatever historical significance it has. I hope you can still enjoy hearing stories like this. I know I've come across many before this happened to me and many after, and I just always, for us car guys, they're more than cars, and they can be, it's an emotional subject matter for some of us because we have good memories and some bad memories that come with owning them and working on them and really making them a part of our lives and making up who we are and what we enjoy to do. So thanks for watching, guys. I've got some great content coming up on the interior front, and appreciate if you could give me a like, comment, subscribe, and appreciate it very much. Thanks.